I'm Becky L. McCoy, and you're listening to Stories of Unfolding Grace, the podcast about grace during unexpected times. You'll hear from real people dealing with hard stuff, and I hope you'll feel encouraged that you can bravely live through hard stuff too. This is episode 15, and I'm talking with Monica Green about what it was like to be a caregiver for her son when he was sick, and what it was like for her to parent her other two children after he'd passed away. I am here with Monica Green, and we both participated in the On Coming Alive project. And Monica, why don't you share with us a little bit about this difficult season that you experienced?
I guess the first difficult season would have been when my son Mason, who was 11, was diagnosed with brain cancer in August of 2014. That was our first really big, difficult season, I guess. You know, everyone has lots of them, but that was a huge one. And just learning a new dynamic within our family and a new dynamic with him. Trying to digest that your child has a terminal illness is a huge difficulty. And then, of course, when he passed away 11 months later, in August of 2015, once again, our family dynamic was changed, which brought on a whole new season of difficulty. But, you know, there's nothing like it. There's nothing to describe it. It's one of those things where you experience such an enormous amount of grief, and that's an amount that you will never get over. You just learn to cope with it and deal with it the best way you can, and try to focus on that hope of being reunited one day.
Mm-hmm. So how did you react emotionally when he was diagnosed?
When he was diagnosed, I felt like the floor fell out from underneath me. Our family had been touched by cancer before. We had been through it with friends and family, but it's nothing you can ever prepare yourself for, especially when it's your child. You know, you expect to see your child live out their life, and you expect to go before them. So being told that he has a terminal illness that there's no cure for and that he is going to die from is very traumatic and overwhelming. And, you know, you don't know how to react to it. I think sometimes you just have to do the best you can with what you know. I had to fall back on my faith, and I know several people turn away, but I had to pull harder because that's where my foundation was, and that's what kept me going. And even though you're told that your child has a terminal illness, it's one of those things where you think, but what if he's the one that survives it? What if he is that one kiddo that makes it? Mm-hmm. And so we did everything in our power to help him, treat him, cure him the best way we knew how. We prayed and prayed and prayed, and he was healed just in heaven and not here with us. Right. But that's what I look at now. That is my focus, that he is healed, although it is not here with us the way we prayed for it to be. Mm-hmm. He is healed. He's no longer suffering, and he's no longer hurting. So that doesn't make it any easier.
No.
But it gives me a point.
Yeah.
It gives me a point to focus on that. Yes, he will. He will know no further pain. He only knows love and joy. I was talking to my 16-year-old son last night. We went to see the movie miracles from heaven. And of course, we were all very upset by it. And he was like, Mama, why wasn't Nathan the miracle? And I'm like, buddy, I don't know. I said, you even heard the mom in the movie say, you know, why is my daughter standing here in front of me in remission, basically cured from this horrible disease she was going to die from, but yet there's so many other people still out there struggling and so many other children that have lost their battles. And, you know, there's no answer for that. I don't know why God chooses to heal some here and why he heals some in heaven. I don't know, but it's not going to scar my view that there is a God and he is a loving God and he does heal us. And one day we will all be healed and reunited. And that's what keeps me going. Even with the hard questions one day.
Yeah. What did you struggle with most while he was sick?
Oh, gosh, while he was sick, I struggled with, he had cancer, of course, so struggling with the treatments, trying to weigh, is this really worth it, or should I just let him be? But I kept thinking to myself, as long as he is here with me, as long as he's breathing, as long as he's doing well, I have to do everything I can in my power to protect him, to heal him, because he's my child, and that's what my purpose is. That's why God gave him to me in the first place, was to protect him and to, you know, make sure that he's taken care of. And that was my job, to take care of him. And that's one of the hardest things now, too, after his death, is struggling with, you know, I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. What more could I have done? And some days that little teeny tiny 3-letter word, why, haunts me.
Yeah, for sure.
Such a little tiny word with huge, huge implications. So I try to stay away from that and think about, this is just a tiny part of our life here, just a tiny part. And once God decides it's our time to be with him, this is not even going to matter. You know, we will probably remember the illness and the sickness, but we won't remember the pain.
Yep.
And, you know, I know there's a reason why we as human beings are not capable of understanding God's plan. It's bigger than anything we could even imagine. So, I think, you know, that's the biggest part that I had hard time struggling with, is not being able to do enough for him and letting go of my control issues. Because I learned very quickly that I have no control over anything, not one thing. And that was a hard lesson to learn. And, you know, to this day, it's still hard to think, okay, you need to step back. You're not in control of this. You need to be still and let God work. And he will show you what you need to do.
Yeah, I hear you.
So,
yeah, it's so hard, especially when you're the primary caregiver and you do hold a lot of responsibility. And and with cancer, everything they give them for treatment is toxic. So I'm sitting here masking myself and gloving myself and trying to protect myself from him, but then yet I'm giving the medication to him, and I'm going, what's wrong with this picture? I know.
I'm protecting myself from something on the outside that I'm internally having to give him. And, you know, is this going to work? Is this going to be the magic medicine that takes care of it? Is it worth him not feeling well? Is it worth his blood counts dropping? Is it worth him getting some horrible infection that he can't fight off because his blood count's not high enough?
Yeah.
You know, you go back through all of that, but in the end, you just have to think you did what you knew what was best at the time, and you listened to your doctors, and you prayed about your decisions, and you made the best decisions you could at that time.
Yeah. I can imagine that those 11 months that he was battling with the cancer was, I just can't even imagine how difficult that was for you as a mom and as a caregiver and as mom of other kids. But then sometimes people think that when you're no longer playing that caregiver role anymore after Mason passed away, what was that like? Because that's a whole different kind of really hard season.
Yeah, because you're, like I said, your dynamic has changed once again. Mm-hmm. You go from the dynamic of medications, you know, a schedule every day of what medication at what time and what day you have to be at the hospital and what day you have to have this test and that test. And you go from that complete crazy schedule to nothing. There's nothing. There's no medicine. You come home, the medicine's on the counter, and you're like, I don't have anyone to give this to anymore.
Right. You
come home to the mask and the gloves and the syringes, and it's like, well, I have no more use for this. What do I do with it? And it's very, you know, you're already empty because that piece of your heart has already left. Mm-hmm. And you come home, and it's like, it's just such a huge change from what you were doing. And it's almost like you would give anything to have that back because Mason would still be here, even though you're still on this crazy medication and this crazy schedule and trying to keep up with all of his appointments and whatever. He was still here. Mm-hmm. Even though he was sick, he was still here and he was still with us. So that's hard. And then trying to, you know, we took our other two children out of school. My oldest son did online classes, and my daughter, I basically homeschooled her through her school. And you go back to putting them back into school and them going back to school when they've missed basically a year of what they've been doing and trying to reintegrate them into that kind of environment again.
Right, while grieving.
Yeah, while still trying to go on. You know, I was talking to a friend last week who had lost her sister, and I was just overcome with grief for her because I started thinking about my own children losing their sibling. And not that I hadn't thought about it before. Mm-hmm. I was just starting to process some things where I'm trying to move through my own grief. I'm worried about my kids because, you know, they're trying to move through theirs as well. And am I doing enough for them? Am I holding it together enough for them? Mm-hmm. So they see me cry, I see them cry. And I know there's going to be different seasons with their grief as well. I mean, one is 16, one is 10. In 5 more years, they're going to be totally dealing with this in another way. Mm-hmm. And just the difference in their ages, you know, my 16-year-old, he understands what happened, yet he doesn't understand why we couldn't fix him, why God didn't put him here.
Right.
And I'm more like, yeah, we don't know that either. And then I have a 10-year-old who's like, Mommy, I didn't get to say goodbye to Mason. And I'm trying to tell her none of us said goodbye to him. We told him we loved him and we would see him soon. Mm-hmm. There were no goodbyes. And, you know, the other day she came to me and she said, I miss his voice. I want to hear his voice. So we brought up videos and we watched videos. And she said, I just want to hug him one more time. And I'm like, I know you do, love. And I said, one day you will get to do that.
Yeah.
And she came to me yesterday and she said, Mom, I heard Mason. And I'm like, you did? She said, yes. He was sitting next to me and he asked me if I wanted to do something with him. And so I think he asked her to watch some show, so she turned the show on. And, you know, my husband and I just looked at each other and thought, I'm sure she did hear him. I'm sure in some God-giving way she heard what her brother was trying to tell her.
Yeah.
And she has a hard time with not being able to talk to him. And I've told her when we pray, talk to Mason, tell him what you're thinking. And she's like, but he doesn't answer me. And I said, Liz, I said, he will answer you, but it won't be through talking, but it will be in some way he will answer you. I said, whether you find a penny on the ground or you see a butterfly go by or you have a sweet, sweet memory of you and your brother doing something, I said, he will answer you. And he will know, and he does know. And, you know, that's a tough one, trying to move through your own grief, breathe through your own pain and your own questions, and then trying to make sure your kids are moving through theirs as well.
Yeah. So
but totally, you know, it goes back to everyone handles it so differently, you know, mom, dad, brother, sister, man, male, female.
Right. There's so many.
Everyone has their own way.
And I'm so glad that you said, like, you see that their grief changes, because that's something that I think about a lot, especially. So my kids were 2 and not even born yet when my husband passed away. And so, you know, how they're grieving now, Libby doesn't even realize that some people have dads and some people don't. She's a year old. But, you know, in another 5 or 10 years, that's going to be a really hard thing for her. And just kind of not knowing how to anticipate how their grief will change and what seasons of life are going to be more or less difficult for them or me.
Definitely.
We just don't know.
Right. It's you trying to, you know, move through it with them.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the tough one.
For sure. Do you feel like you handled Mason's sickness and his passing in an emotionally healthy way, or are there ways that you kind of wish you had handled it a little bit differently?
You know, I can't really think of, I'm not sure how I would do it differently because I only can do it the way I know how.
Yeah.
I cried. The difference, I can't tell you, there was a difference between my husband and I. My husband was angry at God. He was so angry he would go outside at night and scream at God. And I never got to that point. I wasn't angry. I think I was so sad and overcome with grief from losing Mason. I couldn't get angry. And I don't want to be angry because I don't think it's healthy. And he's passed. My husband he's pretty much mellowed quite a bit. He still questions why so much, as we all do. But we have a really good friend that is a priest, and we visit with him occasionally. And he was here a few weeks ago, and Jeff talked with him, and, you know, it's like it brings in a new spirit into him and kind of revives his spirit to push forward and to move forward and not be angry. And I think it's okay to cry. I think it's okay to feel that pain and that grief, and I think it's okay at any time. I don't think that, first of all, you have no control over it. You can be walking down the street and, you know, a piece of paper blows by and you're like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of a time and blah, blah, blah. Or you can be watching a movie, or you can be having a conversation with one of your children and they say something and like, oh my gosh, that sounds just like something Mason would have said. Or your facial expression looks just like Mason, and it will totally just send you off. It doesn't, you can wake up in the morning and think, oh, it's going to be a great day, in the next 2 minutes you're in tears on the floor because of whatever. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to compartmentalize their grief. Like, okay, my loved one died 2 years ago. I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I shouldn't be having these feelings anymore. It's over and done with. I need to forget about it and move on and look for the joy in my life. Which, you know, that's their total right. But yet, I think especially through Lexi and on Coming Alive, I have learned that you are going to have grief until the day you are reunited. But you can have joy. Right. You can be happy again. You can laugh. You can you can go on and you can move through life with happiness. I don't think I've gotten to the point where I'm as happy as I was before Mason died. Mm-hmm. But have I laughed? Yes. Have I laughed about him? Yes. Do I have precious memories of laughing with him and being happy with him? Yes. Mm-hmm. And we continue to make more because that's what he was about. He was about love and he was about life. And he would be so mad at us and so sad if we just stopped doing all those fun things and stopped being happy.
For sure.
And that's the one thing I want him to be remembered for. I want him to be remembered for the loving, sweet, compassionate little boy he was. I don't want him to be defined by the cancer.
Right.
That's one thing that I will not allow. I don't want him to be remembered that, yes, he had an illness. Yes, it was cancer. But he was so, so much more.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to remember.
I get so excited to see people choosing to live bravely and authentically. Each week on Tuesdays and Fridays, I host a Facebook Live event to share more stories of people living bravely, and I want to hear your story too. Join us at facebook.com/Becky L. McCoy. Share so much with you here on the podcast, but you can read my story and learn more about living bravely and authentically at my blog, BeckyLMcCoy.com. Stop by and sign up to receive my monthly newsletter. It includes book recommendations and blog posts and podcast episodes you may have missed. Check the show notes for details. So I'm using this definition of grace as good things that happen during bad times. Can you think of maybe an example either from when Mason was alive or since he's passed away that you have just seen, you've been surprised by really wonderful things happening?
My best story is our social worker at the Cleveland Clinic lost her husband in March of 2015 to the same cancer Mason had. And so when we were told on July 17th that there was nothing else they could do for Mason and he would be passing shortly, she walked me through every step of the way. Hmm. Her love and grace that she possesses for what she does and for what she did for me and for my family is only through God, because here she is at home with 3 small children. She just lost her husband to the same horrid brain cancer Mason had, but yet she has the love and grace to help me plan his funeral, write his obituary, come all the way from Cleveland to Oklahoma to attend his memorial service.
Wow.
We still talk, still have so much love for her. Mm-hmm. She is the definition of love and grace. She honestly is. I can't think of a better story than Aaron Feldman being my friend through something this horrible.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know that only comes from God.
Yeah, that's
overwhelming. I can tell you others. Yes. I mean, just so giving of herself. And I kept telling her, I can't believe you're sitting here with me picking out urns and trying to figure out what we're going to do with Mason and what funeral home we're going to use and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. And I said, you just did this with your husband and you're doing it with me. And she goes, it's what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how graceful is she to be able to put aside her own feelings and her own grief, what she's going through, to help someone else to make the same plans she just made.
Wow.
You know, and I have stories of rainbows after Mason passed away, rainbows in Hawaii when we were there because that's where he wanted to go. And I just know little things like that. But through Mason's illness, through his passing, we have met amazing people. We have been given amazing opportunities. And I know that is all through Mason. It is all through God. It's just God's way of helping you heal and God's way of giving you the grace to help others heal.
Mm-hmm. How, since spending almost a year as a caregiver for your son and since losing him, have you chosen to live bravely and authentically?
I think that maybe just trying to continue raising awareness for pediatric brain cancer, trying to help other families that are going through it as well. I hope that my friend Erin, her grace, will give me, I know it gives me a huge example to follow. And I don't think I could do anything that would make Mason any prouder than to continue living my life to help others and to continue giving in any capacity whatsoever, whether it be through his foundation, whether it be through the school he went through until he could no longer go. I've also tried to just live my life, live for the moment. Before Mason died, I was very, everything has to be in its place. Everything has a time and place for it, whatever happens. And I just felt like if I didn't have control of something, I just would totally lose my mind. And now I've kind of stepped back and thought, it's not such a big deal. It's, Olivia didn't go to school yesterday because we had traveled late the night before. And I'm like, normally I'd been like, oh, you have to go to school because it's Monday and,
right.
You need to go. Just because your brother's not in school, doesn't mean you get to stay home. But I'm like, in the big picture, it's not going to matter if she misses a day of school. She's in 4th grade. Whoopie-doo.
Yeah.
I've also tried to I know God put me on this planet to be a mama. That's all I know. And I try to be the best one that I can be for my other 2 kiddos because, let's face it, life is hard, and especially hard when you're a kiddo and you've lost a sibling. And I know that they're trying to work through that, losing their brother, as well as trying to figure out and navigate how to handle a different mommy and a different daddy because we're all forever changed.
Yep.
And I know that Jeff and I are both different now because of that change. And I know my kids probably notice that, and I hope they notice the good out of it. I hope they don't just think of mommy as being sad and crying. I hope they can also remember a happy mommy and a mommy that would do anything to help them.
Yeah, that is so incredibly courageous of you to be determined to continue to be the parent that your other 2 children need, because it would be so easy to see losing Mason as failure, but it's not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it could also be so easy just to lay in bed and pull the covers up over my head every day.
Yeah, but
sometimes my husband will ask me, he'll say, I don't know how you keep doing this. You get up every morning and you keep going. And he said, you're such a strong person. I don't know how you do it. And I said, I have to. I have 2 other babies that need me. And I said, I can't just quit taking care of them.
Yeah.
I feel like to some degree, I was not taking care of them as well as I could have while Mason was sick because my whole focus was Mason and treatment and trying to get him better and keep him comfortable and make sure he had everything he needed. At the same time, trying to help my other 2 with homework or spend quality time with them. And that was That was really hard trying to balance all of that out when you've got one that's deathly ill. And I can remember Olivia saying to me several times, well, you just love Mason more than you love me. I wish I had cancer. And I was like,
oh heartbreaking.
No, I'm like, no, you don't ever wish that.
Yeah.
And Spencer would be like, Mom, why didn't I get cancer? Why was it Mason? It should have been me. And I'm like, no, it should be no one.
Right.
No one at all.
Right.
I said, don't ever blame yourself because your brother has cancer. I said, it's life, Spencer, and life is not fair, and life is hard, and we learn lessons. And I said, but our reward is being reunited again in eternal life. And if we can get through just this teeny tiny part of our life here on earth, think about what glory we're going to have once we get where Mason is.
Wow. And you said that you are helping other families walking this same journey. What advice do you have for other families who are dealing with an ill child?
The only thing that I can say is if you do not have any sort of faith base, you have to find one. I'm not sure how anyone would get through it without their faith. And you just have to believe in your heart that there is a better place, that we are going there. Someone way bigger than any of us taking care of every single step has it planned out better than we could ever hope for. Anything better than we could plan.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, again, I'm going to say I don't know why God chose to heal Mason in heaven and not here with us. But I do know that that's part of his plan. And is it fair to us? No. Do we understand it? No. Are we upset by it? Yes. Are we totally just put off by it? Of course. But one day we will be together again, and that is what keeps me going. When Mason was sick, I prayed every day. I continue to pray every day, several times a day, just because that's what would get me through the day. And I told Mason several times, if you are tired of fighting and you can't fight anymore, Mommy and Daddy are going to fight for you. But you come to know very quickly, even with him fighting and Mommy and Daddy fighting, if someone else is in control of the situation. And at that time, you know very quickly that there's something bigger and better out there waiting for you. There has to be, because that's our promise, and that's what we lean into. But other than having a faith base, I would just say you are your child's biggest advocate. If you think there's something that needs to be done, you push the doctors for it. If you have a difference of opinion with the doctor, you push for it. If you think something else should be done, you push for it. If you don't think this doctor is giving you everything he can or she can, you find another doctor. You keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because you are your child's voice. Your child can only be part of that voice. You have to push for your child. You have to do whatever is in your realm of possibilities to keep going and to get your child healthy. And you keep working towards that goal until you have exhausted all your efforts and there are no more.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for talking with me.
Oh, definitely. I know that people will be encouraged that that you're so free with sharing your story and so vulnerable about it. Before we go, I have a few more lighthearted questions for you, just so that people can get to know you a little bit. The first is, what are you loving right now?
What am I loving right now? Oh my gosh, I'm loving being part of On Coming Alive. This project has meant the world to me, and I'm so honored that Lexi asked me to be a part of it. And just feel like I have a whole new family of support and a whole new family and friends through this project. And I'm loving all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm loving that we just celebrated Easter, and that gives us hope of new beginnings.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite meal or snack or other kind of foodie treat right now?
Well, I'm trying to be healthy these days. That doesn't always work out. So I'm a sucker for Mexican food and Italian food. I'm probably a carb freak, but I love that I can go for chips and salsa or chips and queso at any time.
Yeah.
I love Starbucks. I don't do too much coffee, but I love a good chai latte. And I guess that would probably be my two biggies: Mexican food and Starbucks.
That's awesome. So I don't know if you listened to Lexi's episode, but her favorite was chips and queso. So she'll be like super excited to hear. That's one of your favorites.
Yes, Lexi and I have found that we have quite a few similarities.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
Like I said, I'm trying to eat better. I try to get out and walk, and I try to have some just mommy time with mommy herself.
Yeah.
And I try to focus on my kids individually, and also my husband too, because I can't leave him out. He needs me too.
Yep. And the last question is, what are you doing to be brave?
What am I doing to be brave? Sharing my story, sharing Mason's life, and talking about what happened and where we can move forward through it and what we can learn from it and how we can help others.
Yeah, that's huge. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, please rate, review, and share Stories of Unfolding Grace. When you give it 5 stars, it goes a huge way in helping other people find the podcasts by increasing my ranking. If you're interested in sharing your own story of unfolding grace, head to my blog, beckylmccoy.com/submissions. I can't wait to hear from you. Next week, I'll be talking with Marietta Retif. She is a writer and former junior Wimbledon player from South Africa whose tennis career was cut short by a physical disability. I was so incredibly encouraged by this conversation, and I know that you will be too, because she has got to be one of the bravest people I've ever spoken with. Tune in to hear her story on episode 16 next week. Thanks again for joining me. I'm looking forward to next week.